As you saw in all the announcements, it's this one's a little unusual because we are honored to have the designer of a brand new, exciting paddle planning tool who's presenting from the East Coast. So we're starting at 6 p.m. and we're going to start with Joe's presentation and then do any of the rest of the club business after that. So he has a chance to get some sleep if he needs to. So tonight we'll hear from Joe Berkovitz, who many of you know. Joe is a paddler, a longtime paddler, a software developer, and a sculptor, which I didn't know he was a sculptor. And he lives in Marblehead, Massachusetts. He's been kayaking for decades now, some decades, and he's paddled in some fantastic locations. I'd love to buy him a beer and download a bunch of information on these locations. But the Maine coast, Iceland, Arctic Canada. He's got a trip upcoming to Newfoundland, which I'm dying to hear about, and of course the Bay Area. Many of you may remember Joe, who taught an excellent course over several sessions to a bunch of baskers on the ArcGIS, using the ArcGIS program to prepare maps. And I think this is going to basically blow that out of the water and be far superior. So Joe's a first-class navigator, and he built this program as a means to simplify preparation of charts and planning paddling for kayakers across the U.S. So after Joe's presentation, we'll get on with the rest of the usual business of Basque. And Joe, of course, you're welcome to stick around for that, or not if you'd like to just retire and go to sleep. So without further ado, let's have Joe take it over. Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for the lovely introduction. And thank you all very much for the chance to speak to you and share some of this work with you, which I hope will be useful. I'm going to share my screen here. And, let's see. All right, so yeah, can everybody see a big black window with nothing in it?
It says you've gone incognito.
I've gone incognito. I'm just starting off with a blank window here. Let's put something in it. I'm going to go to Floating Trails. Floating Trails is a website. And you can either put in floatingtrails.com or you can Google Floating Trails. It will come up as the first entry. So let's just make this little window here smaller. Well, before I dive in and like show you guys some stuff, I just want to say a little bit about the origin of this. I was lucky enough to be involved in helping with the Chart on Every Deck initiative, and I worked on creating a bunch of the charts that went into Chart on Every Deck, and got to work on some of those enhancements along with Joe Pedalino and Tom Colton and other folks, and I got a big kick out of that, and it really made me want to start with, something for folks in my area that would offer them some of the same tools and same benefits that the Basque Trip Planner has. So this kind of started off as, well, let's do a New England trip planner. And as time went on and I started working on it, I began to realize, well, it's actually just a certain amount of work more to do it for the whole country. Why don't I do that? And then it gradually, although it started out as a trip planner, it has many of the same kinds of features that you would see there, kind of points of interest, marine charts, tides, routes and so forth, it became more and more of a kind of a slightly different planning tool because of the national and even international focus, and because it just started going in a different direction. Because my concern wasn't so much a specific club as how can I make something for a really general audience. So um, that's led to floating trails, and I'll show you what it's about tonight. Um, so when you go to floating trails, not surprisingly, you see maps to start with, and you can browse those maps, and you can search for places. So we might as well go to San Francisco. And you'll see that the default stuff you see is the new style NOAA maps. Um, I'm not a huge fan of them, but that actually is the one thing that will cover the whole country uniformly. And you can browse all these maps. And in some areas, Basque's home area in particular, I've imported points of interest. So you can see a lot of the same things that you see on the Basque trip planner. In fact, it's the same data with Basque's permission. I've put those in. So part of what you have here is mapping, but there's also other layers that you can look at. So you have the old paper maps. Those are still available I've put them in a few areas. Likewise, Basque's home area and New England. There's a satellite view. And this is Microsoft Bing's satellite view, which has some place names overlaid on it, which I find pretty useful for kind of really close-up surveys. It's pretty nice detail. And OpenStreetMap. So that's the mapping side of this. And so far, it looks a lot like maybe the trip planner, but it starts to diverge from it in a few important ways, I think. So one is that, and I think this has become a more and more central feature of the program and how I think about it. You can print custom charts directly from Floating Trails. So you can see up here in the corner, there's a print chart button. And if I click that, it's going to load up the graphics, and I can make myself a nice printed chart with a grid and a scale bar, and it'll show everything that is on the map that I'm looking at that point. So you're not really limited to pre-cut PDFs of only certain areas. Like if we want to pick specific layers, let's go back to the nice paper charts. And maybe I'd like to put in some tides for today, for this moment. And maybe I'll lay out a little route here going from there to there to there. This is probably not a very good route, but please forgive me. The point is you can put custom stuff on your map. And sorry about the bad zooming here. Let's make this look a little better. If I print that, it's going to include all the custom things that I've put on my map. And I can print that and have that on my deck. Let's make this a landscape so that it matches what I was looking at a little bit better. And now I could print this. I can print it to a PDF or send it straight to my printer. And that's ready for use on my boat. So this has kind of become, to me, one of the most important aspects of floating trails, because I don't like to carry electronics with me or use them much when I paddle. For me, it's about being on the water and looking at what's happening around me and paying attention to that. And the chart helps me, you know, have a plan and know where I am and interpret what I see, but I don't really want to have a device that I'm looking at, consulting it. So this is not a tool that's really intended for you to hold in a phone in your hand while you're on the water. There's other tools that are better for that. This is more about preparing for a trip. Um, so let's see, having said that, let's look at a few more of the main things that are here for you in floating trails. So let's see, I'm going to turn off the tides and I'm going to clear out my routes. So in general, in floating trails, you can click anywhere and you'll see a little pop-up box that relates to whatever it is that you clicked on. If you click on a point of interest, you'll see a pop-up box that relates to that place. And for Basque stuff, this tends to be the same as what's in the Basque trip planner, minus the images. So these are a little bit more terse than what you would find in the Basque trip planner. But there's also some standard things you can do for any location that you click. So you can get directions via Google. This will bring up a Google map that will maybe show you how to get to this spot. Hey, that's not the right location. Must be a problem here. All right, well, we'll get to that later. You can get forecasts for this location. That does look like the right location. Oh, maybe that Google map maybe that was actually right. It was just showing like water with nothing. I probably was zoomed all the way in. You can go to windy.com and it'll show you the same map in Windy and the forecast for the location you picked. Or maybe I want to see nearby weather observations from NOAA. So this is another aspect of floating trails, is just these pop-ups. Wherever you click, you're going to get these standardized links that take you straight to some other website that's useful, that gives you a different set of information. So floating trails is a way of stitching all these things together and making them very accessible from one master map. Rather than trying to jam all that information into floating trails. Floating trails is sort of, besides offering what it offers, it's a jumping off point for these things. You can also, on any one of these little pop-ups, copy information into the clipboard if you want to send it to someone. So here's another thing you can do. Let's say I've got my tides up and I want to send this little tide table, and just click copy info. And maybe I'm sending someone an email. If I just paste that into the email, there it is. It's not a picture. This is actually text. Like somebody could maybe pop that into a spreadsheet or, put it into a Word document, whatever they want. It's just text. These also link through, just like the weather does. So I can click through and see NOAA's own tide station page from a tide station if I want to see the graph and all that. The tides and floating trails are animated, similar to the ones that you might see in the Basque Trip Planner. So you can pick a date and you can move the slider around to see how they change. And we have tides out to 2024 stored in the program. So you can plan into next year using this tool. Guess this is going to be September. And if we zoom way out, you start to get a collapsed view of lots and lots of stuff at a nationwide level. So you can see, perhaps you can see, they're quite small little numbers next to these tide stations. These are clusters of tide stations that are just kind of lumped together when you zoom this far out. So you can start to actually see how the tides are changing at a very large scale along the coast, if you care about that. When you zoom into specific spots, you're going to recover kind of that same density of information that we had before. So now we're up in Puget Sound, and we can kind of follow what's happening here on a given day. So very wide range. Let me talk a little bit about sharing. That's one of the other kind of backbone features of floating trails, is that it's designed to make it really easy to share. So, I could print this chart, of course, and print it to a PDF and send the PDF to someone, right? But another thing I could do is I could, gotta move this little picture of myself, click share map and copy the link. Now in Floating Trails, the link to a map will always reproduce all the information in that map. So if I was to go to, this email that I'm composing to my paddling group here, and just stick this Floating Trails link in here, when somebody reads this, if they click the link, they're going to go to a new page that looks exactly the same, which they can mark up or do whatever they want with, or they can scroll around and explore other areas than the one that I sent them. So that's called deep linking. And it ensures that when you share a Floating Trails map with someone, they're going to see all the stuff that was up, the same things you saw, the same layers, the same arrows. If I put a route on it, maybe some markers, if I just share this link using share map, um, you know, that same link is going to include all the information. So if you're planning a paddle, you just really need to share a link. You don't need to share a picture of it. Let's see. Well, let me talk a little bit more before stopping for some questions about using Floating Trails on a phone. It does work on a phone. I use it probably as much on a phone as I do on a laptop. Let's see. I need to see a picture of myself so I know what it is that I'm showing you. Well, if you just go to Floating Trails, you'll see much the same sort of thing that you see here. It's the same design, same tabs at the bottom. Works the same way, pretty much. It's not so great for printing, understandably, because the screen is so small, it's hard to kind of design a chart on your phone. But it's great for doing a lot of simple things. I don't tend to use it on the water much, but where I have reception, it works fine. It doesn't track or keep it. It will geolocate, so you can punch a button. This is the geolocate button here on Google. It will geolocate, but it's not going to capture a track of where you've been. It's just not really designed for that. It's more for the upfront process. But you can use it on the water, certainly, to pull up tides and pull up information and pull up weather. So it is handy for that. And if you pass out charts to people, you print a chart like this one, and you've got that on your deck, or you give it to a friend, this QR code in the corner, if you scan that with a phone, it will take them to the same map, which is really kind of handy for syncing if you do want to stop and check something about the environment on your phone and you have a Floating Trails map, that QR code will take you right there. So I think that's a whole lot of what's in here. I haven't shown every single thing you can do. But a lot of the things that you can do are pretty self-evident, like pop markers onto the screen. You can drag them around. You can get rid of them. If you have routes, you can click on them and see like the total distance, the distance of any given leg. You've probably noticed there are distances and magnetic bearings on each leg of a route, so that's pretty handy. And you can edit routes and change them, make them longer, shorter, different shapes, change your mind. All right, well, that's a sort of a quick exposition, and I'd be happy to see where the conversation goes from here. But hope that makes sense to y'all.
Wow, that's fantastic. There's so many features. Let's unmute people and see if we've got questions. I guess people raise your hands or whatever, and we'll unmute you.
Folks can unmute as they ask questions.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start. I am curious. This is amazing. And I just know that my folks in Brooklyn, at Brooklyn Big Part, and just actually there's a bunch of boathouses in New York. Like I bet they would love something like this. And I'm curious, like, do you have a procedure if people wanted to add like points of interest to the map? Like, is that like a possibility? Like, I don't know if there's like an interface for it or if they just send them to you or is that even...
I would really, yeah, so it is kind of hand curated at this point, and I would love it if people there could get in touch with me if they think that they're capable of assembling, a big collection of stuff. I have actually avoided trying to expand the points of interest nationwide because it is so challenging to do, even for an area where what's going on. So I've kind of held off on doing even the adjacent areas that I don't know as well. And it's a good thing that Basque had all this ready-made data because that made it much easier. But
like I know there's a water trail, there's like a New York water trail like that. It's kind of obvious stuff, and then there's a lot of local things that I'm sure would be kind of cool for them. So I can put in touch with you if I can get your contact info.
Sure. I mean, I would be happy to hear from people and find out more.
Sweet.
Oh.
Thank you.
Jump in, folks.
Oh, okay. Joe, I got a question. This is Jonathan. Is there any search function for tide conditions or current conditions or moon conditions, anything like that to search?
Well, no, there isn't really. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by search for conditions.
So like in the trip planner, I can say, when is the current going to be over 3 knots at Yellow Bluff?
Oh, I didn't even know you could do that in the trip planner. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And no, there isn't.
Okay.
So, I mean, what you can do is if you look at the tides, you can bring up a particular point and you can just start exploring like, okay, well, that's what it's doing this date. What is it doing this date?
Yeah.
What's it doing this date? That sort of thing. But as far as searching for certain conditions being met, no,
Okay.
I don't do that.
Check it out. It's cool on the planner. Thanks.
I will.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in. I have my hand raised, but so Joe, about 6 weeks ago, when I was starting to plan our trip this summer to Vancouver Island, I decided, well, I'm going to use floating trails instead of the trip planner, and I mapped out the whole trip, have all my routes, and it was great. Although, of course, one of the frustrations is that Canada does not make its nautical charts available for free the way that NOAA does. So there are no nautical charts available to you. But there are satellite views, which are very, very good also. So I've mapped everything out. and I didn't come up with a way to kind of save my routes. I wonder, so I've kept the window open for 6 weeks. And I was thinking, maybe there's a way to kind of save all this so that I can come back to it later.
I'm so glad you asked this question. So the way that you save anything that you do in floating trails that you set up is using a browser bookmark. That's the easiest way to do it, not the only way. So in every browser, there's a bookmark feature of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just say bookmark. In Chrome, it works like this: bookmark this tab. And I'll just add this to one of my little filing tabs here. So I'll call this Brooklyn trip or something. And now I can go somewhere else. I'll just forget all about that tab. But if I want it back, down here, I don't know if you can see it because it's all the way at the bottom of the screen, is Brooklyn trip.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just pick that again and I'll get my map back. So bookmarks is one way to do it. And it's the way that's built into browsers as a way of remembering URLs. In floating trails, a URL is your map. It contains all the information for your map. So that's
made my day.
one
That
way.
is so awesome. Thank you.
You can also just copy the URL and stick it into you know, a note-taking app of any kind. So I can just stick this URL here, and you know, I can say Brooklyn trip. Whoops, it's it's insisting on spell correcting that. But anyway, yes. So now that link will also take me the same place. So anything that will save that URL works.
I guess I'll jump in now. Thanks, Joe. This is really great. Really love the site. This is James Jacobs. Can you talk a little bit about where you're getting the data that you're using for this site? I mean, it seems like there must be, you know, tons of different places.
Yeah,
so I'd be really interested to hear.
Let me just talk about the kind of neutral national stuff first. So all the maps come from NOAA. They're provided free by NOAA. Yay, NOAA. All the tidal information comes from NOAA. Yay, NOAA. Not X-Tide. These 100% track NOAA predictions. All these little tables and arrows, they all come from NOAA data. And there's a lot of processing done. They don't come straight from NOAA servers. I have to massage them and kind of sort them in a different way and put them somewhere else. Now, other layers come from assorted places. So the satellite view, as I mentioned, comes from Microsoft at the moment. Not sure how long that's going to hold up. Currently, it's a free plan that we're on. OpenStreetMap, open source street map. So then we get to the points of interest, and that's kind of interesting. Like in my area, the points of interest, some of them come from me. Some of them come from land trusts. Some of them come from states, state agencies, like New Hampshire has a database of launches. So these all come from there. Many of the sites in Maine come from a land trust called Maine Coast Heritage Trust. It's a bit of a patchwork. There's no simple single source for these things. Basque is that's the only place where I'm able to go into a region and have like a curated, nice collection of things. So it's really a hodgepodge. And honestly, the point of interest thing is, it's very difficult to do. It's really a bear. It's the thing that I don't know that can be expanded about floating trails. Everything else is just throwing more data into a big pot, but not the point of interest stuff. Does that answer your question, James?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. I also had sorry, one suggestion for you. I just
Please.
tried to map out a route, and my route was going to a place and then coming back. But the arrows for both, I did it as 2 routes, right? But they're both of the routes are marked as green. It would be awesome if the route colors changed, you know, so you had one green and then coming back red or something like that. That would be really cool.
It's coming. It's coming. Yeah, route
Oh,
colors and
yeah.
marker colors. We need different colored markers too. It's not fair that there's only one color. So,
I don't mind green. Green is a great color, but thank you.
yeah, no, you're welcome. All right. Let's see what else.
I have another question.
What else? Yeah.
So just related to that last question, could you say, like, in general, like, are there other features that are kind of on the roadmap that are worth that you want to highlight, or like what's coming?
Yeah. I'm pretty slow to add features because I'm really afraid of adding the wrong thing. And once you put something in, you can never easily take it out. But things I'm thinking about right now include ways to perhaps sign in and save your routes and tracks and markers in a more organized way that would also make them easier to share. But I need to be very, very careful about doing that because so far there's no sign-ins, and that actually makes the site very, very simple to maintain and very, very little burden on the maintainer, me, because there's no one's data that I have to care about except the data for the whole site.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
that's going to be a big step if that happens, but that's something I'm actively thinking about. And I'm always eager to hear about people's suggestions, but it sort of seems like being able to plan routes and mark locations, that's kind of the backbone of what the site's about right now. I'd like to be able to name those things and have some labels. That's another thing, along with colors. Labeling would be good.
Yeah. Do you have a way for people to report, like, kind of bugs or make feature requests?
You bet. Yeah, so there's 2 big ways of doing that. If you have a feature request about a place, just click the place and click comment. And you'll be taken to a form with the latitude and longitude filled in, and you can kind of tell me what it is that you think should be there, shouldn't be there, or should be different. And the other thing you can do is you can, in the menu, there's a feedback feature, site feedback.
Oh, I totally missed that.
And yep, and then you can give me feedback or report a bug. And yeah, that's how that works. And I actually read those.
Awesome.
Joe, this is Eitan. I'd love to jump in. I just want to say that I've been playing with the tool for the last couple of weeks. And each time I've been finding all these great features, I've been going and checking the original source data, not believing that all this data could be in one place. So it's a fantastically useful tool that saves a lot of time. I wanted to ask you very quickly, so for a place like New York City or San Francisco that has pretty busy shipping lanes, do you have a way of showing the deep shipping channels that are used by the really heavy cargo ships? You know, the ones that, for example, a tugboat pilot, you know, will be guiding. Those are really useful and really busy places, like New York City. Do you have a way of highlighting them on the map?
Yeah, they should be on NOAA's map. I mean, let's go look and see.
Because that's just a huge benefit. And by the way, this tool it's super helpful to motorized boating and sailboating as well.
Right. So, I mean, in New York Harbor, you have to zoom in to a certain extent before you'll get to see all that stuff. But I mean, this is NOAA's map of New York Harbor. This is the same information that would be on an electronic chart that a commercial ship would see. So right now we're looking at the main shipping channel going out of New York.
Oh, I found them. I found
This
them
is just,
zooming in. I was wondering if there was a way
yeah,
to have a highlight line. It may not be a feature available now, but to have a highlight line before you zoom in.
I wish it were, and all I'm doing here is just acting as a conduit for NOAA's own charts, and they suppress that information at a zoomed out level. Like I think if I zoom out one more time, oh, there we go. It does pick up at a certain point.
Oh, that's, I
You
mean,
can
that's
see
pretty
that.
useful.
That's not too bad. It's still, I think if I zoom out one more time, some of that's just going to disappear. No, it's still there. I'm surprised. Let's try one more time. Well, there we go. I gotta say that's better than I was expecting.
That's quite
But you
good.
can see, but you can see when you get into the inner area, it just turns to solid blue because they have a very aggressive algorithm for suppressing detail in these harbor areas. And I've complained to them about it, asking if they could include more of a summary. Like if we were to go to the old paper version of this, well, that's not great either. Okay.
Is it for, do you know if it's for security purposes? Is it for harbor security?
No. If we were just wicked zoomed in on this inner area, and it'll come up if we zoom far enough in. You'll see it show up. Right there it is. The issue is they're trying to make this set of charts all things to all people, and they're not very good at summarizing areas with very, very dense detail electronically in these newer electronic charts. I mean, I have many complaints about these new school charts, but they've had to make this change, and they're still dealing with the fallout from it.
You probably
Yeah,
know these people, but I do have a pretty senior NOAA contact that's leading the electronic
yeah,
project, and I'm happy to share it with you afterwards.
yeah. I mean, the person I've talked to is a woman named Christy. I'm trying to remember her last name, but she's like one of the leaders on the team migrating to these new charts. But by all means, James, I mean, if you have specific issues with them, if you go to NOAA custom charts, which is actually the same charts we're looking at here, but on their website, they have a feedback tool that you can use to report problems. And that's probably how I would do it, is go through their channels. That's how I have reported problems to them.
And one quick second question. How can individuals
Yeah.
add data? Is there a way for individual contributors to add data without having, in other words, would they have to contact you to arrange a permission, or they can submit it and it needs to be approved?
They have to contact me, and I'm looking at ways where people can host their own data and blend that into floating trails so that I don't have to be an intermediary or legally responsible. So that may be a way that this can be done going forward, but at the moment, no, there's no automated way to do it. And I could really get into a lot of trouble if I build the wrong stuff into this tool. So I've had to take a lot of care to exclude things that would be legally problematic.
Understood. Thank you.
But
So,
it
I
does
have
seem like, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I have sort of an end of the weeds question. Is there,
Yeah.
I've had to help create maps to adjust for color blindness. Is there a way
Mm-hmm.
for these to be adjusted for colorblind people?
Not specifically, because all these images that you're looking at, Floating Trails doesn't generate them. They're just passed through from NOAA or from other servers. So Floating Trails doesn't actually generate the maps per se. it's just acting as a kind of a conduit to bring them to your browser. So I don't know that this is a double negative.
Difficult
I
to get.
don't know that NOAA doesn't pay attention to color blindness. I think that they probably have had to think about it, but I don't know how far they go. And they certainly employ color on their maps. And I know that it's a complicated issue, and I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, it's been a challenge before, and it's hard for a national spectrum to have adjustments made for that. So I was just curious if there was any way to adjust it. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no real kind of fine tuning, but if you're aware of a source for maps that do address people with specific vision impairments or anything like that, I would be very interested to know.
Me too. They're almost always custom. Almost
Yeah.
always. Thank you.
Joe, there's a
You're
question in the chat for a while back from Dirta Man. Do you want to address that?
I haven't been looking at the chat.
That's fine. I
Can
can
someone read it to me?
I can read it, Joe.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Dorta says, great tool, Joe. My question, what does feature near here mean? I'm looking at Alaska and there are quite a few of these points, but when I zoom in, there is no additional clickable information.
Feature near here. Well, maybe they could share share a link to the floating trails map they're looking at, so I
Dorta,
can
if
see
you're
what that is.
there, if you want to share your screen, we can do that.
Yeah, we could try that. They can share their
Okay.
screen and show it.
I don't see her. There she is. She may have, she's muted. So, well, maybe if Dorta, if you're there, or somebody else can too, get on Alaska and see if you can find that feature so we can figure that out.
Well, I'll resume sharing my screen again, but you know, Alaska's pretty big. Alaska.
So, Joe, I got a question in the meantime while we're figuring that out. So you're using this as a portal to other charts.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Features near here. There we go. If you click, so let me explain that because I can answer this question actually. So if you see one of these little circles, these circles refer to features that are jammed up together at the scale of the map so that you couldn't be able to distinguish them. So if you click on one of the circles and says zoom in, you're going to zoom in closer. And apparently,
there's nothing
why
there.
aren't we seeing anything?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
see what it was. It was data buoys.
Okay. So you have to have
It was the data buoys.
selected in your overlays.
Apparently you do, yeah. So you know what? That's a bug. That is a bug because when you zoom in, it should turn on the overlays so that you have a hope of seeing the stuff that the little circle referred to. So I'll make a note of that. Very nice. Thank you, person. I forgot your name, but that was a good catch.
Dorta was one of the initial, if not the major designer. This is going back before my time, but of the trip planner tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she started it out, and then she and Joe Pedalino did the bulk of the work.
Yeah, if you have all this stuff turned on, and you click on one of these little zooms ins, it should show you. I think the zooming in could use some work.
That's probably a NOAA thing, though, right?
No, that's actually floating trails. The zooming in part. All right.
Yeah. So I was going to ask for if there are sources of charts, let's say from other countries, that might be available, even if so, because I know for New Zealand there was a source that made a free chart available that I can't remember if it was actually from the official New Zealand Naval Service or whatever. So if there's
I've run into this issue. Sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead. I just was
Go
curious.
ahead.
Would you be reluctant to have a portal to those, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's very hard to track all these things out there, and some of them are legal to include and some of them are not. And what I think what I was alluding to before is if someone can find a source that they want to personally kind of jam into floating trails, I'd like to give them a way to do that where they can say, okay, here's the URL from my map source, include this as a layer, and then it would show up as a base map. That way I'm not involved in distributing it or building it into floating trails, but there's still a way to access it. And I think that's going to be possible. I've run into this a few times making maps for people in Iceland and Canada and here and there. And, you know, as you said, a lot of these things, a government agency somewhere will make them available online, but they'll say it's copyrighted and you can't use it. And, you know, so I don't want to be the one including it, but I think there may be a way that, you know, at the user's discretion, if they know of a map source that they want to display on their browser, they could put it in somehow.
Yeah,
It's a future feature.
Yeah. So here's an ignorant question. Like the maps for Canada, for example, can you access those electronically, but you have to pay for them, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to pay for them. Now there are sites that will show you there are sites that Canada has running that will show you kind of low quality marine charts, and they're free, but the high quality ones not so much. Actually, what I found works best for that is topo maps. Those are free, and Gaia GPS actually has a Canadian topo layer that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I've used that at times. Also, I think right now, you know, for Canada stuff, like Bing isn't too bad because it's got all these place name overlays. I think we're in the Yukon up here, right?
yeah.
And I mean, gosh, you know, this is almost better than than a marine chart for many areas. So for all the Newfoundland planning that I've been doing, I've used either marine charts or topo maps. I mean, sorry, either topo maps or satellite imagery, not marine charts, because they're just not that good in some of these areas.
How often does that Bing satellite update? Do you know?
I don't know much about exactly what their schedule is, but I do know that the imagery is really like often very good quality.
Wow.
It's quite impressive. Look at that.
That's
It's
great.
insane. I think those are shadows of trees on the water. Huh.
Joe,
All
real
right,
quick
anyway.
follow up on color.
Yeah.
Joe Pitalino mentioned that the Mac OS has a feature that helps folks who are colorblind, and NOAA apparently does follow accessibility compliance. So James shared
I would
links
think they would.
for that.
Great. That's
I've
good
just
to
had
know.
to deal with accessibility so much. It's kind of in my brain.
Yeah. All right. I think I've used up about an hour of everybody's time.
Okay, any questions? I'm looking through the chat. I don't see any more. Yet, but last call. Raise your hand if you've got a question. Don't see any. Fantastic tool though. This is so good. I can't wait to start using this too. And the Yukon is on my list too. So now I've actually got a method.
Good.
Yeah, well,
All right. Well,
how many hours of software development time did this take, or were you counting?
I haven't really counted. I kind of work on it whenever I'm not paddling and don't have something better to do. But I encourage you all to find me on Currents or use the feedback feature in Floating Trails. Drop me a line if you think of something or have a question. And I try to keep up with questions weekly. So I will definitely get back to you if you reach out to me. And
Well,
I'll be in the Bay Area in August, and I hope to see some of you then.
Yeah, let us know. We'll try to get a paddle going if for everybody
Great.
down. Well, thank you on behalf of
Hope
everybody.
you can make it for Mendo.
Yeah, September.
Yeah,
August at the moment. Well, we'll see.
Okay.
Family
you can
schedules are
stretch it.
complicated. Yeah, that's right. No one
Stretch it
will
till-
notice I stayed an extra 4 weeks, right? Yeah. All right. Thank you all very much. I'm gonna go Betty bye
Thanks,
now.
Joe. There's lots of thank yous
Have
in
a
the
great
chat.
meeting.
So thank you from all of us.
Thank you.